How you doing, everybody? Vasu Vaddiparty here with the VPartySports Podcast for this Saturday morning, 9 o'clock on the East Coast, 6 a.m. on the West Coast. Lots of football to talk about. The NFL goes on Saturday today with the Christmas holiday. Merry Christmas to you and yours. Hope you have a fun weekend, fun-filled sports weekend, and Santa's been good to you. No coal in your stockings for your football team or your NBA team or whatever sports team you have, or your sports action for that matter. So Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you all for the year of support in 2022. It's been phenomenal. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty, as I said, the VPartySports Podcast. We're here every weekday with a daily post at 6 Eastern. The weekends, we'll do it early, a couple times a week for the podcast. Stay informed with us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter as well, too. All right, let's get to it. A big weekend, as we said. The NFL Week 16 started last night, Thursday night, in the Meadowlands. The New York Jets, a 2-point favorite, 36.5. Jacksonville's been red hot. They come in, 4 field goals, a 1-yard touchdown run by Trevor Lawrence, a 19-3 win. They are now 7-8 in the AFC South. Can you believe that? 7-8 in the AFC South. They were started 1-6 this year. So you're talking about a 6-2 spot. Trevor Lawrence has been great. Doug Peterson's offense has been working. Their defense has been tackling. And the Jets did not have Mike White. They had Zach Wilson. He was not impressive at all, but that Jacksonville defense, very, very, very impressive. Jacksonville jumps up 1 spot. They're still behind New England. They overtake the Jets by beating them yesterday. The head-to-head is the first tiebreaker. They're behind the Patriots. They're behind Miami and the Chargers at 8-6. The Chargers beat Miami, so they have the tiebreak. So the Chargers are 6th. Miami is 7th. And right now, the Patriots are 8th. And Jacksonville is 9th. Now, the division is not out of reach for Tennessee. By the way, 229 yards for Trevor Lawrence, the 1 rushing touchdown. It was the kicker, Riley Patterson, with 4 field goals, 32, 45, 41, and 37. That accounted for the 19 points, but that defense was outstanding. They limited Zach Wilson to 92 yards passing. Michael Carter only had 44 yards receiving, but for Jacksonville, 229 through the air for Lawrence, 83 yards for Travis Etienne Jr. on the ground. And Evan Ingram, remember him? 7 catches, 113 yards. They got the ball down the 1-yard line, and that's where Trevor Lawrence took it in, a 1-yard touchdown run to make it 10-3 at that point. And the Jets' offense never really threatened from there. So 19-3 the final. Jacksonville at 7-8. The Jets at 7-8. Jacksonville leapfrogs the Jets. They're behind the Patriots in the 8th spot, and then the 7th and 6th spot are held by Miami and the Chargers. Miami plays Sunday. They've got Green Bay on Christmas Day. But right now we're here to talk about Week 16. The Jacksonville Jaguars, we said the division is still reachable. The Titans are 7-7, so they're a game back in the loss column. They've got the Houston Texans this week. If the Tennessee Titans lose, first of all, it'll be a 5-game losing streak. They'll fall to 7-8. Jacksonville has already beaten them this year. So by the end of the day tomorrow, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who started 1-6, could be in first place in the AFC South. And about 6 weeks ago, we said, the AFC South and the NFC South are both done. Tampa Bay's got it wrapped up. Tennessee's got it wrapped up. Well, that's a Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend, statement right there, because Jacksonville still has a very, very reachable, very, very possible shot to not only get into the playoffs, but to win the division. We'll tell you the ramifications in the NFC with Tampa Bay, who was 6-8. All the other 3 teams in that division have 9 losses, so they're only a game behind with 3 weeks to go. Carolina, Atlanta, and New Orleans, they have the tiebreaker edge over the other 3 teams in the NFC South. But getting back to last night, cold, miserable night in New York. I hear there's a lot of hockey games being postponed because of the bad weather in the east coast of Canada, and up in Buffalo, I believe they're canceling the hockey game as well, too. But I don't think that's going to affect the NFL games at all. Everybody goes on Christmas Eve, with Christmas Day being Sunday this year. So Week 16 off to a flying start. If you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, if you're a Doug Peterson fan from the Philly days, you got to like what you've seen with the Jacksonville Jaguars, 6-2 in their last 8, a 19-3 victory. All right, let's take a look. You'll see the lines going at the bottom of the screen. The updated betting lines for the NFL for all of Week 16 for Saturday, Sunday, and the Monday night game between the Chargers and the Colts, which has turned out to be a huge game for the Los Angeles Chargers. Not so much for the Colts, but for the Los Angeles Chargers as well. All right, let's start with the AFC. We already told you about Jacksonville, so here's how it's looking. Buffalo, the Bills, are 11-3. They hold the 1 seed. They're still tied with Kansas City at 11-3, but they beat them head-to-head back in Week 3. Kind of a dumping of Kansas City in Kansas City. Kansas City doesn't cover the point spread, by the way. I think most people know that wager on games. They just don't cover the point spread, and they haven't done it the last few weeks. The Texans, the Texans was the main one that I was thinking about. And then they played Tennessee early in the year when Malik Willis started for Tennessee. A 3-point overtime win for Kansas City. So Buffalo is in the 1 spot. They are taking on my Bears. Oh my gosh, my Chicago Bears. 3-11. What an upset that would be. They're at home. They're an 8-point underdog. I tell you that they can cover at home. Can they beat the Buffalo Bills, the number 1 overall seed, the number 1 seed in the AFC? Philadelphia is the number 1 overall seed, but the Chicago Bears are hosting the Buffalo Bills, trying to help Kansas City out. Kansas City will host the fading Seattle Seahawks, who have lost 4 of their last 5 and 2 in a row as it stands right now at 7-7. 10-point favorite for Kansas City at home against Seattle. Is that too much? The way Kansas City doesn't cover, possibly. Tennessee, we mentioned them. They host the Houston Texans. They're only a 3-point favorite. Can you believe that? A 3-point favorite for Tennessee against Houston. They're on a 4-game losing streak. Malik Willis is starting. Ryan Tannehill hurt himself last week, had a bad ankle. So he's out, and Malik Willis going to start. Cincinnati and New England. Is there anybody hotter than the Cincinnati Bengals right now? They're on a 6-game winning streak. They are 10-4, a game better than Baltimore. They lose the head-to-head to Baltimore, so they have to win the division outright. They do play the Ravens again later in the year. The division record favors Baltimore. They're 3-1. Cincinnati only 2-3 with 1 more division game left. But conference-wise, the Bengals are 6-3. The Ravens are 6-4. Baltimore will be without Lamar Jackson. They will host Atlanta, about a 7-point favorite tomorrow. That offense has struggled the last few weeks. They have not played very well. They've given up a number of points. Their defense has played well. They've given up points. But the offense between Tyler Huntley and no running game right now has put a lot of pressure on the defense, and it's hurt them a little bit. So they had the win against Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago, and then they lost last week with to the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. That's not good. That's your rival right there. The Cleveland Browns beating up on the Baltimore Ravens. So you got to think that that's going to hurt them a little bit. They're 10-5. They're 9-5 now in the standings. 1 game back of Cincinnati. They have the tiebreaker. As we said, they're 4-2 at home, 3-1 in the division. So, but they're going to be without Lamar Jackson again. And with 2 weeks left in the regular season, you got to wonder what his status is going forward. And then on Sunday, Miami is in the 7th spot. They host the Green Bay Packers. They're about a 3.5-point favorite. As you see on the ticker there, on the VPartySports Podcast ticker, you'll see all the NFL lines going by right now with all the updated point spreads and totals, including the Monday night game. But Miami is 8-6. They are in 2nd place in the East. The division's over. They got beat by Buffalo on Thursday night, 2 Thursdays ago. So that division is over. When did they play? Thursday? Last Thursday, a week ago Thursday. So 8 days ago, Buffalo beat them in 32-29 on a game-winning kick. So last Saturday they beat them. So 11-3 for Buffalo. Miami 8-6, 3 back. The division's going to be pretty much over with Miami right now. They do play Buffalo one more time. If they can beat them, then they've got that little of an outside shot to go from the number 2 spot in the division, the number 7 spot in the wild card, to a division winner in the AFC East. Doesn't look very promising. Green Bay Packers right now, they're 6-8. They got a big win against the Rams to keep any playoff hopes alive. Green Bay is division-wise, they're in 2nd. Vikings have captured that. They're 6-8. They're a game back of the Lions. The Seahawks, 2 back of Washington, who's in the 7th spot. The Commanders are there with that tie with the Giants. Giants, who beat Washington last Sunday night, 8-5-1, are in the 6th spot. Of course, Dallas running away with it. As far as wild cards go, they're 10-4. They're 3 back of the Eagles in the NFC East. But that's what's happening in the AFC right now. Let's move on to the NFC. Let's move on to the NFC now. The Jalen Hurts will be out for Philadelphia. So Dallas Cowboys, 4.5-point favorite. No Hurts. The Eagles have the best record of 13-1. They've almost won their division. All they got to do is win one more game for their division. They're 2 games ahead of Minnesota for the best record. But now Dallas has a chance to catch. Actually, they won't have a chance to catch Minnesota because they're in the same division as Philadelphia. But the San Francisco 49ers will have a chance to catch them as well, too. The Cowboys are 5th in the wild card. Giants are 6th. They go to Minnesota. The Vikings are 11-3. They're 7-1 at home. About a 4-point underdog are the Giants, who need this win. They will lose the tiebreakers to the – actually, they're tied in all the tiebreakers, 1-3-1 in the division, 4-5-1 in the division with Washington, who's their main competition right now. But both the Giants are 8-5-1. The Washington Commanders are 7-6-1 after they beat them last week. So the best thing to do is just keep winning, stay a game ahead of Washington, and you're going to stay ahead of the 7th spot in the wild card scenario. So the Giants will be at Minnesota. Washington, they're going to get Chase Young back. That pass rush can be fierce. Chase Young complements the entire pass rush. So they're going to get him back. Montez Sweat there. They're going to San Francisco. San Francisco red hot right now. They've won 5 in a row, 7 in a row. They're 10-4. The Vikings are 11-3. They're 6-3 in conference. 49ers are 8-2 in the conference. So if there's any way they can catch Minnesota and a win tomorrow against Washington goes a long way. They're rooting for the New York Giants, the team that the 49ers usually don't root for. But if somehow Minnesota and San Francisco end up tied, all of a sudden you're looking at a 2 seed, which means you get 2 home games in the playoffs. You're not going to get the 1 seed, and if you end up having to play them, then you go on the road. But to get 2 home games in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs is huge. And if San Francisco can win, they've got a good shot against Washington. Here's a funny thing about Washington. I heard Ron Rivera this week talk about his quarterbacks, Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke. Now, we know Washington had a bad run, but Taylor Heineke is 6-2-1 as a starting quarterback. 6-2-1. They're 8-5. Carson Wentz was not the answer for the Washington Commanders, but yet they're talking about if they don't get the offense on track, then we may have to look at a quarterback change. What are you talking about, Ron? I love Ron Rivera, former Bear, 1985 champ. Riverboat Ron, the gambler, every 4th down he goes for it. Love him. But how can you say Taylor Heineke is not the best option for the Washington Commanders? They're in 7th place, I get it, in the wild card. But where they were to start the year with Carson Wentz at quarterback, 6-2-1. Ron Rivera, 6-2-1 for Taylor Heineke. Now, I'm a press guy out on the West Coast. Maybe I don't know anything that's going on internally. Maybe there's an injury they're not disclosing. Something's going on. But Carson Wentz was the starter. He hurt his thumb. Heineke came in, as he did a couple of years ago. He's led them to a 6-2-1 record. How many times do I have to say it? 6-2-1. So here's the scenario for the Washington Commanders in that 7th spot. They have, I'm trying to see if they played Seattle. I believe they did. I want to say they did. They did not play at Seattle. The Giants played Seattle. They lost to them. The other teams involved in the race, Green Bay, they beat Green Bay this year, so that's a no factor for them. Detroit, they have not played Detroit. They have not played Seattle, I believe. Let's make sure, double check here. No Detroit and no Seattle. Any games coming up? No, they're not going to. They got the 49ers, they got the Cleveland Browns, and they got the Dallas Cowboys in the final week of the season. So neither of those 2 teams. So they're going to have to rely on those 2 teams either losing or hoping that the Giants lose and they can overtake the Giants and have the tiebreaker edge on them. That's where they're at right now in the 7th spot. San Francisco set 7-game winning streak. They were 3-4. Now Brock Purdy has come in and led them the last 3 games, 2.5 games. The defense has been outstanding. We know that. They've got a lot of Pro Bowlers on this team. They're hosting the Washington Commanders, looking to go 11-4. Not that far out from the Minnesota Vikings for a 2 seed. Don't think they'll catch Philadelphia, but you never know the way this team's playing. That's a Super Bowl defense right now. Seattle and Detroit behind the Lions. The Lions will visit Carolina. Again, a road favorite for the Detroit Lions. How about that? Who in Detroit? Raise your hand. I see you all watching me right now. Raise your hand and tell me if you thought the Detroit Lions were going to fight out for a playoff spot. Week 16, Thanksgiving, your season's over generally, and you have the traditional game, and the only time you get national TV. But now they're getting the number 1 announcing crews. They're getting the good time slots. The Carolina Panthers, by the way, are 4-9. Or 5-9. They're a game back of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 6-8. Remember when I said don't take Tampa Bay, laying 2 touchdowns on the road to Carolina? Carolina behind P.J. Walker, their 3rd-string quarterback, Baker Mayfield has since been released. We know he's with the Rams. But the Carolina Panthers, if they run the table, including a win against Tampa Bay, they can win the division. So they're in the same spot as the Jacksonville Jaguars. This has just been ugly in terms of how the scenarios have gone for both South divisions of the NFL, both the AFC and the NFC. Carolina runs the table, beats Tampa Bay. They can win that division. They can't have losses like they did last week to Pittsburgh. If they were at 8 losses, if they had won that game against Pittsburgh, they could have been in first place, especially the way Cincinnati manhandled the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. So 6-8. All three of the other teams, the Falcons, the Saints, are all 9 losses. Carolina has a better tiebreaker over Atlanta and New Orleans, as we said. So it's going to be impossible for them to be able to make up. And they're certainly not going to be in any wild card scenario because there's just too many teams in front of them. But the division title for the South, the only way to go. All right, let's break it down further in 30 seconds. We'll break down the games themselves, the point spreads. We'll give you all the changes. There's some quarterback news to go with that. The ticker goes at the bottom. Vasu Vaddiparty here on the VPartySports Podcast. Reach me at VPartySports on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook. You can find me as well. If you're interested in sponsorships, please contact me directly. We'll be back on Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific time. NFL recaps from Saturday, Sunday previews, daily post weekdays at 6 p.m., 3 o'clock on the West Coast, and then early on the weekends. By 11 o'clock, we'll have some posts out, especially with college basketball, the NBA, NHL, all getting into full swing here. Don't forget, we got bowl week. A couple bowl games at the time we're taping on Friday going on right now as well, too. So we'll have all the recaps of that on Sunday as well. But mostly an NFL weekend with Christmas. A ton of games tomorrow, 3 games on Sunday, 1 on Monday night. 2 more weeks left after this. A lot of playoff ramifications, a lot of wild card ramifications, still some division possibilities, and, of course, the all-important seeding when it comes down to playoffs, the seeding that goes into this. I want to thank everybody on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for all your comments. Appreciate it. Please feel free to keep sending them, and also reach out to me on social media. All right, we're back in 30 seconds. I will have the games individually. We'll have the point spreads all lined up. You see them on the ticker, but we'll break it down individually as we go into the Saturday games coming up in a few hours. A full Saturday of football on this Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas to you and your family and to all your loved ones. Hope it's a great Christmas as we head into 2023. Looking forward to better things in 2023 for you as well as for us here at the VPartySports Podcast. See you in 30 seconds with a recap, with a preview of Saturday football and the rest of the weekend. Welcome back to the VPartySports Podcast for the next segment here where we break down the NFL games for Week 16 individually. We gave you a kind of an overall general view of what's going on this weekend. The Jacksonville Jaguars got their win last night against the Jets. If you listen to me, you had them last night. You made some dollars. You made some dollars on the Jacksonville Jaguars. 1 game back of the Tennessee Titans, who play tomorrow against Houston. If they lose that game, there'll be a 5-game losing streak. Jacksonville will end up being in first place with a great chance to not only win the division, but to make the playoffs as well, too. So that's what's going on. The Jets now fall behind Jacksonville in the head-to-head tiebreaker, and they're back behind the Patriots, 2 games back of the Patriots and the Miami Dolphins, as well as the Jets are 7-7. So they're a game back of the Patriots, 2 back of the Dolphins in terms of wild card standings. The Chargers also at 8-6. They're in the 6th spot in the wild card. So the Jacksonville Jaguars, 4 field goals from Riley Patterson, 1-yard touchdown run from Trevor Lawrence, 19-3, the final score. All right, let's hit like a little college football here just for a second before we get to Saturday games. Tomorrow night, Saturday night, the Hawaii Bowl. San Diego State out of the Mountain West, 7-point favorite over Middle Tennessee State, 47.5. Look for the Daily Post to talk more about that. But San Diego State, outstanding defense, outstanding special teams. Offense struggled this year. We saw that in the Mountain West games, but they were right there in the conference championship talk as far as the Mountain West goes. Middle Tennessee State, the total 47.5. Don't know much about Middle Tennessee State, but we will on the Daily Post. the BCS semifinals a week from today. Number 1, Georgia, a 7-point favorite over number 4, Ohio State. That's the Peach Bowl. That's in Atlanta, Georgia. 62.5 the total. That's the primetime game, 1 versus 4. ESPN will carry both the games. The number 2 Michigan Wolverines are 7.5 versus TCU. At number 3, 58.5 the total. That's the Fiesta Bowl in Glendale, Arizona. That'll be there at 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific from Glendale. And then 8:15 on the East, 5:15 on the West for Georgia, Ohio State. The 2 winners will meet on Monday, January 9th at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. SoFi Stadium, I'm sure you know, the home of the Rams, the LA Rams, and the LA Chargers. So that's where the winners will meet on that Monday. And it's going to be a good semifinal series. Don't be surprised about upsets. I know everybody's thinking Georgia and Michigan, but I wouldn't count out Ohio State, TCU, until the Big 12 championship against Kansas State had their way with the season. A lot of comeback wins, but Kansas State got to them, and this could be a tough matchup for Michigan with TCU. Max Duggan in the Heisman Trophy candidacy as well. No Blake Corum, but Donovan Edwards from Michigan has been great. C.J. Stroud, quarterback at Ohio State, has got a plethora of receivers. Marvin Harrison Jr. being the top one, and then Georgia. That defense, Anderson leads that defense. Stetson Bennett, the 4th, had a pretty good year. They've got a great running game. Overall, they've only averaged about 12 to 13 points given up on defense. So Ohio State's offense versus Georgia's defense, Michigan's running game versus TCU's passing game are where we're at. The winners, January 9th, SoFi Stadium, Inglewood, California. The top 6 in the BCS rankings, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, Ohio State, Alabama will get a game on December 31st as well. And then 6th is where Tennessee shows up. All right. The NFC, we said. The games that we're going to look at right now, the Minnesota Vikings, a 4-point favorite, 48.5 versus the Giants. The Giants are 8-5-1. They are in 6th spot in the wild card ahead of Washington, who they beat last Sunday night. Saquon Barkley had a pretty big game. Daniel Jones looks like he's handling the offense that Brian Daboll's brought in. But the Giants got into a little lull in the middle of the year. They were 6-2. Now they're 8-5-1, so 2-3-1. Played Washington back-to-back, tied once, won once. So that tiebreaker goes to them if in fact it comes down to it. So that's going to be good for the Giants, even if they end up tied. And we did some research, found out that because of the head-to-head being the first one, that the Giants have the edge over the Washington Commanders. Minnesota looking to hold on to that number 2 spot. The 49ers are crashing hard. How about that comeback against Indianapolis last week? Down 33-0. They win 39-36 in overtime. I know what you're saying. 3.5 points. They never cover anything more than 3 points. And here they are at 4 points. So you have to see what the best bet segment says if, in fact, we go to that. By the way, best bets will be posted online at 11 a.m. Eastern and again at noon Eastern tomorrow. We're not going to do a best bet segment here, but wanted to make sure that you get the best bet segment printed out on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter at 11 a.m. Eastern, and then I'll share it again at noon Eastern so you have them all by kickoff. It will include all the NFL games that we have for Saturday as well. Anyway, all right, so the Giants, 4-point underdog against Minnesota, a lot to play for both teams. Minnesota trying to hold the number 2 spot. Giants trying to maintain their 6th spot in the wild card race. Don't think they'll catch Dallas. They've already lost to Dallas. Cleveland 3 versus New Orleans. New Orleans 9 losses. Technically, they're a game back in Tampa Bay, but I don't think they're gonna catch them. They lose all the tiebreakers. That game on Monday night a few weeks back, that really hurt them when Brady came back with 2 touchdowns in 3 minutes to beat the Saints. Otherwise, the Saints would be in first place right now, believe it or not. Deshaun Watson has been okay since he's been back for Cleveland. They're 6-8. They're not going to catch anybody, I don't think. They lose tiebreakers. They are 3-2 in the division, so they're better than the Cincinnati Bengals right now. They did beat the Bengals early in the year, but they're 4 back of Cincinnati, so that's not going to happen to catch Cincinnati. 32 the total there. That's about the lowest total I've seen in a long time. What would you do if you were wagering that game? Would you go over, thinking that any slip up can lead to a touchdown? I mean, you get 21 points at the half just by accidentally scoring. So, see, 3-32 for Cleveland. Detroit 2.5 at Carolina. Like I said, when are the Lions favored? 2.5 at Carolina, 43.5. Lions on the line, the wild card. They're in 8th place. They're behind. They're tied with Seattle. They're actually in ninth place. Seattle did beat them. So they're behind Seattle. Seattle's leaking oil big time. But Detroit's got a shot to catch Washington. I believe they beat Washington. Let me see this here. I don't remember. They did beat Washington, so the Commanders did lose to Detroit, so that's bad for them. And the Lions did lose to the Seahawks. Lions beat the Commanders, and the Lions lost to the Seahawks. So that's your competition right there. So the Detroit Lions need to win, get ahead of Seattle, and then they've got a shot to catch Washington. They've got a shot to catch the Giants as well, too. I believe they beat the Giants as well, too. So Detroit 7-7, 2.5-point favorite at Carolina. Carolina has all the tiebreaker advantages in the NFC South. They're a game back to Tampa. They've already beat Tampa once. They run the table, and they end up going 8-9 and a win over Tampa Bay head-to-head. That gives them 2 wins against Tampa Bay. They could win the division. They're in the same spot as the Jacksonville Jaguars are in the NFC South. Cincinnati is second hottest team by a number of wins in a row, 6 wins in a row. They demolished Tampa Bay last Sunday. I mean, they made the Tampa Bay defense look silly. Joe Burrow was outstanding. They were down 17-3, but they got 31 straight. They're a 3-point favorite at New England. Bill Belichick been a home dog this year quite a bit. 41.5 the total. What's the weather going to be like? You can't imagine. There's going to be a lot of points. Mac Jones, I don't know what to say about Mac Jones. Their running game has been so-so. Defense has been so-so. They played okay, but they've also had some bad stretches here as well, too. So Patriots last week, they were at the Raiders. They lost on that crazy play, the touchdown to walk it off for the Las Vegas Raiders when you're trying to lateral it. I still haven't heard the answer. Hey, there's a funny thing about that. So Bill Belichick in his press conference, he talks about how, we made mistakes. He never answered the question. He didn't look at the tape, whatever the case is. And so the joke has always been on to Cincinnati. Well, here's the funny part. They are playing Cincinnati. So it's on to Cincinnati indeed, Mr. Belichick. And now you need a win to keep your head above water in order to maintain the playoffs. Cincinnati 3, 41.5 at Buffalo. Boy, that's a tough one. New England's very tough at home. Cincinnati red hot right now. 6 in a row that they've won, and they demolished Tampa Bay last week. Buffalo, mentioned it earlier, an 8-point favorite at Chicago, 40.5. They're playing for the 1 seed. Bears are playing for the 1 seed as well, too, except it's called a draft pick in the NFL. 40.5. Justin Fields has been great. Montgomery has been really good. Defense has given up yards, so you just don't know how. That's going to work out for the Chicago Bears in terms of a red-hot Josh Allen coming in. They don't cover in one-score games. So if this is a one-score game, then obviously it's a one-score game, and that means Chicago will cover. But it's either going to be a blowout or Chicago's going to give them a really tough time. Detroit gave them a really tough time at home on Thanksgiving Day, and this is a road game at another NFC North city. They lost to Minnesota, and they barely beat Green Bay. They did not cover against Green Bay. So they're 0-2 against the spread. 0-3 against the spread against 0-2 against the spread against NFC teams, NFC North teams this year. Tennessee, Malik Willis starting for Ryan Tannehill, 3-point favorite, 35 the total for Houston. They played better. Davis Mills has looked good. They've covered. They covered against the Cowboys. They covered against the Chiefs. They have played well defensively. They've got Tennessee in their sidelines, 4 straight on the losing end for Tennessee. A loss will give Jacksonville the first place for the Week 16 standings because of the Jacksonville win. 3 points. You would think that earlier in the year this would have been a 10.5 point favorite, but now the way Tennessee's playing, it's a 3-point favorite. Kansas City, they don't cover more than a touchdown generally. They're 10-point favorite versus Seattle, 49.5 the total. They've leaked oil a little bit here, have the Seahawks. They've lost games that they shouldn't have lost. They lost to Carolina 2 weeks ago, and then they came back and lost to the 49ers 2 Thursdays ago. So they're on a streak right now that's not good. And in order for them to maintain their playoff hopes, they're going to have to get through this. They've lost 2 in a row. They've given up 355 points, scored 355 points. So that's where we're at with Kansas City and Seattle. Baltimore 7 versus Atlanta 34. No Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley going to get the start. We gave you the ramifications. Baltimore 1 game back to Cincinnati. They have the tiebreaker on them. They need a win to maintain the AFC North. They don't want to fall too far down in the wildcard standings. You don't know when Lamar Jackson is going to come back. San Francisco 6.5 versus Washington, 37.5 the total. All the possibilities are there for San Francisco. Washington needs a win to maintain playoff to maintain their 7th spot. 49ers trying to get to the 2 spot as well. All right, and finally, Saturday, Dallas 4.5 versus Philadelphia. Philadelphia, the best record in the NFC. They're not going to have Jalen Hurts. Gardner Minshew of Washington State, he's going to start. 4.5-point underdog, 47 the total. Philadelphia already beat Dallas this year. They covered in Philadelphia. That was with Hurts. And then the 50th anniversary of the catch is going to be celebrated Saturday night. The Pittsburgh Steelers are -2 versus Las Vegas, 38 the total. Sending out condolences to the family of Franco Harris, who passed away on Tuesday, 72 years old. He's not going to be part of the celebration, obviously, and it's just too bad to read that. These are the teams that I watched growing up, the 70 Steelers, and it would have been great to have that 50th anniversary game with all the Steelers and all the Raiders who wanted to be there. Of course, John Madden passed away last December as well, too. So, and I always wondered, I was looking at it, if that was replayed today for Franco Harris, they would have obviously reviewed it, but would they have given him a catch? Did the nose of the ball hit the ground? Did the side of the ball hit the ground? Because he caught it with his hands to the side. And usually you're taught now to catch it with your hands underneath the ball. So it'll be interesting, but sad Franco Harris won't be there. 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception in a playoff game. And I was reading today, some people were talking about that game, people from Pennsylvania. Apparently that game was blacked out in Pittsburgh. So go figure that they had to drive more than 150 miles away to go see that playoff game. Yeah, it's unheard of in today's game that a playoff game would be down like that. So Pittsburgh 2-38 over Vegas. Both teams at 6-8. Not really a possibility, but the Immaculate Reception, the big story there as well. All right, Sunday, Miami has Green Bay, Christmas Day. They're the first game, 50 the total, 3.5. Miami has leaked a little bit of oil. They lost to Buffalo. They lost to San Francisco. They lost to the Chargers. They are on a 3-game losing streak. They were 8-3. They were leading the division. They had the tiebreaker on Buffalo. Now they're in the 7th spot. Green Bay just came off their win versus the Rams. Miami's got to get it going. At home, they play really well at home. Miami 5-1 at home. This 3.5 points, it seems to be a fair number for the Green Bay Packers coming in on Saturday, who are 6-8 and not really a playoff possibility. Denver at 4-10 takes on the Rams at 4-10. Also, 2 4-10 teams. Denver a road favorite, 2.5 the spread. Not sure if Russell Wilson's going to play. 36.5 the total. I think probably he's playing. That's why the line is where it's at. Matthew Stafford out for the rest of the year, and Baker Mayfield is going to be the quarterback going forward. And here's one: the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We know the Arizona Cardinals are a mess. Tampa Bay trying to maintain the division lead. Their 1-game lead over the other 3 teams, Carolina most notably, because they're the ones that they lost to. 40 the total. Kyler Murray out for the year. They're not even going with Colt McCoy. They're going with Shreveth, and I believe is the guy's name. I haven't even seen the depth chart for the Arizona Cardinals. But 7.5 points on the road. Doesn't mean Arizona can't win. Tampa Bay, we've seen what their circumstances have been. Double-digit road favorites, more than a touchdown on the road. They just haven't done the job. They haven't covered it. So 7.5 for Tampa Bay against Arizona. That's Sunday Night Football. And then Monday, a huge game for the Chargers. Now in the 6th spot. They're not going to catch Kansas City, but they are 8-6, and they're 4-3 on the road. They're going to Indy. What a mess Indianapolis is. 4-9-1. Matt Ryan not going to start. They're not going to go to Sam Erlinger. It's Nick Foles. Nick Foles, everybody. Nick Foles has been in the league for a long time. This is not testing out your young players. And I get you want to be competitive because of the integrity of the game. But the Chargers come in as a 4-point favorite, 45.5 for Justin Herbert. And their 8-6 squad, 6th in the AFC wildcard, just ahead of Miami by virtue of the win 2 Sundays ago for the LA Chargers. So there you have it. That's what's going on in the NFL. On our Sunday show, we'll recap all the Saturday games on Christmas Day, 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. So while you're opening presents, tune on the VParty Sports Podcast. We'll give you a preview of Sunday. The NFL will have 3 games. The NBA will have 5 games coming up. 5 games on Christmas Day. Philadelphia at New York. Lakers at Dallas. Milwaukee at Boston. Memphis at Golden State. No Steph Curry in that game. And then the nightcap will be Phoenix and Denver. All those games on ABC and ESPN starting at noon Eastern, 9 o'clock on the West Coast for the NBA. The NHL is off for 4 days. They'll be back after tonight. They'll be back on Monday. They've got a full slate of games tonight. Don't forget to check out full slate of games Friday night as we're taping. And then we'll get you the best bet segment at 11 o'clock and then again at 12 o'clock tomorrow morning and early afternoon in time for kickoff for the NFL. And then on Sunday, we'll recap. We'll recap the entire Saturday. We'll give you the full Sunday previews, a couple of college basketball games to talk about, and the NBA, of course, with the 5 games. That's what we've got on Sunday for Christmas Day. Have a great Christmas weekend. Enjoy Christmas Eve with your friends and family. The VParty Sports Podcast. Looking forward to seeing you Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. We'll recap Saturday, have a full NFL preview, NBA preview of Christmas Day. Enjoy the weekend. Talk to you soon. I'm Vasu Vaddiparty. Have a great Christmas Eve. Talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.